Hello, dear astrology lovers, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Alexandra, and I'm a professional ISAR certified astrologer. In today's video, we are discussing pivotal life moments triggered by transiting Saturn and Uranus. But before we dive deeper into this topic, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date with my latest videos. And it will also let me know that you enjoy this kind of content, so I'll keep creating more. Now, let's get into it. We all know that our lives unfold in cycles, and when we look at those cycles through an astrological lens, we see that they closely align with Saturn and Uranus transits from early childhood all the way into old age. More precisely, whenever Saturn and Uranus square, oppose, or conjunct their natal positions, there is some kind of crisis. Of course, the conjunction can happen only once for Uranus around the age of 84 because it's a slow moving planet. But in general, Uranus and Saturn squares, oppositions, and conjunctions to their natal position trigger pivotal life moments, while trines and sextiles bring periods of stability and smooth changes. Now, let's cover the ages that bring the biggest twists, turns, crises, and growth opportunities. Let's start with age 7. What happens at this age for most kids around the world? They enroll in school. And that's exactly when transiting Saturn squares its natal position. Let's explain this. Saturn stays in one sign for about 2.5 years. Around 7 years after our birth, it forms a square to its natal position and begins a period known as the growing square. Here I have to explain something super important, and I want you to pay attention because maybe you have never heard something like this, so keep watching. Why is Saturn's first square toward its natal position called a growing square? Because as transiting Saturn continues to move forward, the exact aspect, which is a 90-degree square, gradually becomes wider and wider until it eventually reaches an opposition to its natal position, a 180-degree aspect. So the growing square represents a 7-year period which starts at the age of 7 and finishes at the age of 14. It carries a strong energy of the 4th, 5th, and 6th house. This doesn't mean that Saturn is transiting these houses. It can be transiting any house in your birth chart. If it's forming a growing square to its natal position, it always activates the 4th, 5th, and 6th house related topics. Of course, it will also activate the house that it's actually transiting, but at the background. There will be some circumstances that are related to the 4th, 5th, and 6th house. And this applies to Uranus's growing square as well. Now that we have clarified this, what happens at the age of 7? Saturn is squaring its natal position for the first time, and we are beginning to take on responsibilities for the first time. We have to wake up in the morning, show up at school on time, do our homework. For the first time, we have a schedule, and our lives slowly become more structured and organized. We also have a teacher who represents authority, and we find ourselves in a completely new environment, which is our classroom. It's a completely new group for us, and we need to find our place within it. It can be uncomfortable at the beginning because it's a completely different experience if we compare it to kindergarten. And all these things are happening at the same time. So, despite being so young, we begin to mature, which is very Saturnian. When we start going to school, we also separate from our family in a way. Of course, we don't abandon it, but for the first time, we have important responsibilities in the outside world, and at home, we need to study. So we are not available all the time anymore. We are super young, but still super busy. And this is also the time when we may experience our first feelings of love. So we have our elementary school crush, and that makes this period a lot more interesting and exciting. And also, our daily routine changes and our days begin to look very different. So, all of these experiences are triggered by Saturn's first growing square that starts at the age of 7, and it triggers the fourth, fifth, and sixth house themes, regardless of the houses Saturn is actually transiting. It is our first major challenge, one that brings maturity, responsibility, and growth. And 7 years later, at the age of 14, Saturn starts its next 7 year cycle. Saturn's minor cycles are 7 years long, while his major or main cycles are 28, 29 years long. At the age of 14, Saturn forms an opposition to its natal position. The opposition always activates the themes of the 7th, 8th, and 9th houses, regardless of the houses that Saturn is actually transiting. Again, the houses it is transiting are strongly influenced by Saturn, but in the background, as I said, there is an ongoing influence related to the 7th, 8th, and 9th houses. So what happens at the age of 14? We are at the beginning of our teenage era. One of the things this period may bring is our first relationship, which is the seventh house. And this is also the time when our hormones become more active and our bodies begin to change. So we are slowly starting to meet our sexual side, which is related to the eighth house. Saturn's first opposition also bring up important questions such as our calling. Which college or university do we want to enroll in? And in this period, we slowly begin to understand what kind of career we want to pursue and what type of education we need to achieve that, which is the ninth house. So this is an important and I would say very sensitive period or cycle in which we're trying to figure out who we are and where we are heading to. The next 7 year cycle begins at the age of 21, and it's known as Saturn's closing square. It means that Saturn is forming a square to its natal position again, but this time it's not growing. It's gradually shrinking until Saturn returns to its natal position around the age of 28. Saturn's first closing square carries the energy of the 10th, 11th, and 12th house, regardless of the houses that it's actually transiting. I'm repeating again, the houses that Saturn is actually transiting are under strong Saturn's influence, but at the same time, in the background, there will be something related to the 10th, 11th, and 12th house. Saturn's first closing square that starts at the age of 21 is super important because it coincides with Uranus's first growing square for the first time in our lives. At the age of 21, Uranus squares its natal position. We said at the beginning of this video that the growing square refers to the fourth, fifth, and sixth house. This is super important. What does it mean? In most parts of the world, around the age of 18 or 21, depending on the country, young people officially become adults. So their status, which is connected to the 10th house, changes. As I said, the 10th house is activated by Saturn's closing square. Some begin to work for the first time, which brings financial independence and a sense of freedom, which is related to the 11th house, again activated by Saturn. Friendship matters can also become important. Some may notice that they have outgrown certain friendships. Some are building new connections through work, maybe. With Uranus involved, this period can feel like being at a crossroad, which can trigger some fears or moments of uncertainty, depending on your birth chart, because Saturn activates the 12th house energy as well. With Uranus involved, some separate from their parents and start their own independent lives. Uranus and its growing square are activating the fourth house. You're starting your independent life. You're leaving your family home. You simply want to break free and be on your own. And even though in some countries you are officially adult at the age of 18, it's not the same to be 18 and 21, right? You are fully like grown up at 21. At 18, you are still in your teenage era. So at 21, you are an adult for real, despite the law. And even though you are considered grown up at 18, it's different. In some cases, with Uranus activating your fourth house, if the birth chart indicates it, parents may divorce because Uranus is first growing square, activates the themes of the fourth house, right? So it represents the family. In terms of the fifth house, that's also activated by Uranus, this period can bring changes in your love life and the way you approach love. Maybe you will start your first real serious relationship. And if you are still in a relationship that started while you were a teenager, you may end it and meet someone new. Some may detach from their teenage approach to love and start taking it more seriously and perceiving it more like an adult. And in terms of the sixth house that's activated by Uranus, many people get their first job during this period, which also changes their routine. So habits can shift along with the way you live your daily life. And after all these phases, around the age of 28, Saturn returns to its natal position. This is such a powerful moment, and it's known as Saturn's first return. Whenever Saturn returns to its natal position for 7 years, it activates the energy of the first, second, and third house. Again, it doesn't matter in which house it actually is, these three houses are in the background of everything that's going on. So, with the first house involved, your personal needs are becoming bigger, you are becoming more self aware. Also, your values, which is the second house, are being questioned. Your material well being and the sources of income as well. And you're making some important decisions, which is the third house, because you are maturing. With Saturn's first return, everything changes. And this is the period when we truly step into adulthood, not only officially, according to the law at 21 or 18. No, this is for real. Now you feel like an adult. Some get married, and that makes them feel like they are fully grown and independent from their parents. At this point in life, some may already have two or three children. Others may have built a career, and that makes them feel grown up. So it's all about being mature. And Saturn's first return can also confront us with the fact that maybe a part of us is still tied to our parents, specifically to their beliefs and values. So for many, this can be the moment they decide to finally align with their true beliefs and needs despite their parents' expectations. And besides all these things, Saturn's first return also marks the beginning of a new 28-year cycle in which you actively build your life. This phase lasts until the age of 56, which represents Saturn's second return. From 28 to 56, Saturn activates your most productive period in life. And that's when you are building structure and working toward the achievement of your goals. It is the central part of your life in which you are creating something new. It also represents a great opportunity to correct the mistakes your ancestors made. During the first 28 years of your life, Saturn passed over each planet in your birth chart and activated its karmic memory through different circumstances and experiences. And in that way, it reminded you of certain things that happened long ago in your previous incarnations and also in your family line. After the age of 28, Saturn will pass over each natal planet again, but this time it will be different. Now you will have the opportunity to awaken and act consciously, changing the patterns that used to repeat over and over again in your family. This is the time when you can break certain cycles that simply don't serve you. So you have a chance to create new karma and define your vision, mission, and the main things you want to achieve in life. And it's important to understand that even though Saturn represents obstacles and blockages, it doesn't want us to stagnate. On the contrary, it wants us to learn, grow, and build with ambition. If Saturn is in difficult aspects in the birth chart, it gives you the opportunity to awaken by learning a lesson, which also means consciously making a positive change. So it requires effort. And to better understand how Saturn works, remember that it represents a stone, and one of the stones that we know is a diamond. Saturn is a diamond, and it is known that diamonds are brought to perfection under immense pressure. That's exactly how Saturn brings us to a higher level of knowledge and wisdom, through pressure that comes in the form of circumstances. With Saturn's first return, we start thinking about our needs and life direction more seriously. So it brings up important decisions and a greater sense of responsibility of ourselves. For example, there can be some circumstances that are pushing us to change something about our lives. If we are doing a job we know we are not planning to do for a lifetime, this can be the moment in which we finally change it. Saturn's first return represents a pivotal moment that usually includes a call. And the call is that inner feeling that maybe your current life is keeping you stuck in a way. It usually comes as a crisis, and there can be something that is pushing you to exit your comfort zone. As I said, it can be your inner feeling or a circumstance that's challenging you. So you are being challenged, and you can decide whether you want to answer the call or leave everything as it is. If you leave everything as it is, you might sabotage your growth. And if you decide to make a move, things might not go smoothly and easily. So some answer the call and make certain changes, and some ignore it because they don't feel ready. And this brings us to the next pivotal moment that happens around the age of 36, which is the next chance to answer the call. At 36, Saturn forms a growing square to its natal position again. This period is very similar to a midlife crisis. It triggers questions about life purpose, true needs, the right career, your higher calling, and who you really are. At 36, you draw the line. You summarize your previous experiences and define your new direction. You simply feel the need to start a new life chapter. Why is the question of life purpose triggered around the age of 36? Because this period coincides with Jupiter's third return, and Jupiter is very connected to the number 3, so this particular return is very impactful. At the same time, number 36 is the number of the soul. So at this moment, most people feel the need to pause and reconnect with their true selves and their core nature. Consequently, some meet their soulmate, while others start doing something they truly love, something that gives them a deep sense of purpose. For many, big career shifts happen around this age. So this is your second chance to transform and grow. The first one was around the age of 28, and if you missed it, the portal opens again at 36. You may experience some sort of a crisis. Circumstances can push you to change something, or you may simply feel the need to start a new chapter. This is a very important and powerful moment, so pay attention to what is going on in your life if you are around this age. The next pivotal moment occurs at the age of 42, when both Saturn and Uranus form an opposition to their natal positions. So say hello to the midlife crisis. At 42, even if everything seems successful on the outside, there can be a sense that something is missing. Usually, this is a time of restlessness and questioning, is this the life I really want? Many people may make big life changes at this point, and as I explained earlier in the video, the opposition of Saturn and Uranus towards their natal positions activates the matters of the 7th, 8th, and 9th houses. With the 9th house energy involved, you are seeking purpose and more meaning in your life. What happens? Some change careers completely, start their own businesses, or explore a new field. There are some well-known individuals who have built business empires at this age or after the age of 40. With the seventh house involved, marriage becomes an important topic as well. Many people, unfortunately, get divorced around this age because Uranus is involved. Some get married for the first time. And if marriage is not stable, for those who have already been married for many, many years, it's typical to divorce during the midlife crisis and then after it fall in love with someone completely new, almost like a teenager. Of course, it doesn't happen to everyone, but it is typical for this stage of life. And the position itself carries a strong Uranian energy, and on top of that, it is Uranus that it's opposing its natal position. So this can really shake up your life. Then there can be a strong desire to live more authentically and break free from social expectations. So hobbies, creative projects, or passions that were previously neglected often take center stage. People who know you feel like they almost can't recognize you anymore. You change, do more of what you love, and become your true self. And somehow you are a bit rebellious, definitely like a teenager. So, in general, this is a period of transformation and the renewed search for purpose and fulfillment. After the midlife crisis, at the age of 56, we experience Saturn's second return. By this time, we should have achieved many of the things we set out to accomplish during the central parts of our lives. At 56, we are still quite active, but also more experienced, mature, and definitely wise. So we begin to see life from a different perspective. There is always a natural process of letting go of goals or roles that no longer resonate. And I think that's beautiful. Some people become grandparents at this age, which also changes their role and status in life. And this is also a time of harvest when we begin to see the results of everything we've built over the years. It's also the time when many people feel a stronger need to share their knowledge, experience, and guide others, and overall think about the legacy they're leaving behind. So I think it's a peaceful period, very fruitful, and I think it's a period of maturing even more, but in a very positive way. And then at the age of 63, Saturn forms a growing square, activating the matters of the fourth, fifth, and sixth houses again. At the same time, Uranus forms a closing square, bringing up the matters of the 10th, 11th, and 12th houses. Again, I think we've learned so far, but let me repeat. It doesn't mean that they are transiting these houses. These houses are being active somewhere in the background, even though Saturn and Uranus may be transiting some other houses in your birth chart. So, what happens around this age? During this period, it's super easy to fall into a crisis, as this is the stage of life when many people retire. So you are facing the reality of leaving certain circles and closing the professional chapter of your life. You may also feel excluded from everything you used to be part of, and that can feel uncomfortable and emotionally exhausting. However, this period also opens the door to a different kind of fulfillment. It gives you the opportunity to reconnect with yourself, your passions, and the parts of life that were once neglected. This is the time to redefine your role and find new meaning and create a lifestyle that feels more aligned with who you are now. In a way, it's not an ending, but a transition into a more fulfilling phase of life. And the final pivotal moment occurs at the age of 84 when we experience Uranus's first return and only, and Saturn's third return. Ideally, at this point, we should be fully awakened. If we have worked on our consciousness and our beliefs throughout life and learned many lessons along the way, especially Saturn's lessons, and this stage should bring a sense of gratitude and fulfillment. There should be no major regrets or any hard feelings, and that's because The entire point of life is awakening, learning, and breaking negative patterns. So if we lived our lives consciously, this part should feel bright and positive. So, as we saw, every phase has its purpose, and every cycle is an opportunity for us to become more aware, more authentic, and more aligned with who we truly are. But that requires us to exit our comfort zone. And even though some periods may feel heavy or confusing, they are always guiding us somewhere. Moreover, they're shaping us into the people we are meant to become. So instead of resisting these moments and changes, we can try to understand them and work with them. Because when we do, everything starts to make more sense and our lives begin to unfold in a much more meaningful way. It can be uncomfortable at times, but it's a chance to grow. And this brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel. That will help my community grow. And that way you will also be updated whenever there is a new video. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.